Welcome to Between Drafts. I'm Nathan.
I'm Nat.
We have a two-part episode for you today. Nat's book Husk comes out in
2 weeks.
2
Less,
weeks.
a week and a half.
Yeah,
That's
so
crazy.
very
Yeah.
soon. And we're going to talk about Empire of Silence. It's going to be our first time just talking about a specific novel for
Yeah.
a while.
And actually, I should say, when you're listening to this, Husk comes out on Tuesday. So
Okay.
it's going to be, wait, we're actually a week behind now because, so wait, the episode we recorded last week is going to come out next Tuesday.
I mean, we could jump this.
This episode is going to come out on the day Husk comes out.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, or we could just, what is going to happen? Yeah, I think this is coming out the day Husk comes out. So we'll talk about how launch went next week, but Husk should be out today. So go get it. And hopefully it's going well. It's kind of funny talking about it in the future, but
I got my hardcover.
yeah, you got your hardcover. I've been shipping out the pre-orders from my site this week. So I sent 60 of them yesterday, which was pretty fun. Went to UPS with, I had like all of the boxes in my office from getting the hardcovers. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, how many packaged books can I fit in each of these boxes? And then how many can I carry at a time? And I took 60 of them to UPS yesterday. And I've got another 20 in my trunk right now that I'm going to go drop off. And then probably do the rest tomorrow and next week. So anybody who pre-ordered a hardcover from me should already have it by the time this episode comes out, unless you're international.
We'll be getting it right around then.
Yeah, I'll be getting it right around then. I wanted it to get to people like a week before release.
Did you deliver ebook and audiobook as well?
I'm going to send that to everyone on Tuesday,
Nice.
the ebook. The audiobook isn't done yet, so that'll come out in like 6 weeks.
Nice.
But yeah, so those are all going out, and then I'll be pushing everything to Amazon moving forward. Yeah, so I changed the link in my like bio and everywhere to go to Amazon now instead of to my store. People could still order it from me, and I actually prefer it if they do, but at this point, I'm going to push most of it to Amazon.
Yep.
And start getting some rankings there. I got the covers fixed on Amazon.
Oh, did you have to do something or did it just happen?
Ingram did something. I emailed my person at Scribe and asked her how we fixed it, and she sent a note to Ingram. But when she sent the note to Ingram, she told me that they wouldn't have the paperback updated until a week before launch, and the hardcover probably wouldn't get updated until launch week. And I was like, oh, that's kind of annoying. But then literally the next day it was fixed on Amazon. So happy surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't realize how much that was making it look less legit on Amazon.
I mean, yeah.
Like when you clicked on hardcover, it's like, oh yeah, prompt delivery, it's going to show up. And then there's just no image.
Yeah. It looked like it was like the author just forgot to.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Although, dude, it is funny sometimes. You go on Amazon and there are just little things that people haven't done for their book launch, like not filling out their author profile. Like it has the auto-filled profile from the book, but they haven't set up their Amazon author profile with their profile picture and their own bio. And I look at that and I'm thinking, this takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it makes the book look so much more serious. There was somebody whose book came out a couple weeks ago, big 5 nonfiction, obviously put a lot of work into it. And he didn't have his photo on Amazon. I was kind of like, dude, this low-hanging fruit here. So it was frustrating that I couldn't fix that myself, but I'm glad it's all resolved now.
Yeah. That is one thing I've seen you go through this process. There's a lot that you can't do yourself, actually.
Yeah, which is frustrating.
Yeah. Really frustrating.
I mean, especially if you're with a big publisher, you can't change anything unless they want to or unless they do it. At least with self-pub, you have more control over the actual Amazon listing. So, I can go in there and I can tweak things.
Yeah.
But some of it you also can't, which, is frustrating too. And it is a little bit harder going through Ingram for the hardcover and paperback stuff because you don't completely control that direct relationship. So there are things I haven't figured out yet. Like, hopefully I get some reviews that aren't just like Amazon reviews, some like book blogs or whatever, and updating the like publicity section on the page. I haven't figured out how that part works yet, but future problems. It's actually something I need to look into. Is there is a way to submit self-published books to Publishers Weekly and Kirkus and like all of those
To do like
lists.
the reviews or whatever.
Yeah, to get those like blurbs.
I wonder if there's like a level of sales or something that you have to get those, because otherwise they might just get bombarded with
You have
stuff.
to pay.
That sucks.
Yeah, if you're self-published, you have to pay. So for Crypto Confidential, maybe the publisher has to pay.
Yeah, they might have
They
paid.
probably,
probably
did. Yeah. But I didn't have to worry about that. And so I need to look into how I do it and what it costs to do it. And Scribe offers it as a package, but the price was a little high. And I was like, I'm going to see if I can figure this out myself.
It feels like you can just go direct and do it.
Yeah. And if I'm going to be publishing a book or two a year, like I'd rather start developing those relationships now. And I'm hopeful that because they've already reviewed a book by me, it'll be easier to build that connection.
Yeah.
Definitely with Kirkus, because they loved Crypto Confidential. Publishers Weekly did not like
Was that the one where it was like, I'm not sure the dude read the book?
Yeah. It was one where the review was really strange.
Yeah. I was like, I've read this book and this
review makes no sense.
There's one thing to get a bad review. It's another thing if the review just doesn't really align with the content of the actual book.
Yeah. I'm okay with getting like a bad review, right? Obviously not every book is for everyone, but the criticism has to match the content. And that was
maybe
odd.
Start with Kirkus.
Yeah, I'll start with Kirkus.
Well, that'll be a good future update, like what that costs and what that process is like. I've never thought about that, but it makes sense.
And it on the one hand, it's like, maybe it's a vanity thing, but on the other hand, it does lend credibility to a book.
Yeah, if you can write, a little blurb from Kirkus right at the top, start review, boom.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's better than nothing.
Especially for a self-published book. Like it does hurt my soul a little bit to not have any blurbs on it. Like I understand that for the average buyer, it's not gonna. Yeah. But it does help. It definitely helps.
For sure.
So yeah, it should be out today, depending on when this episode comes out. So go grab a copy if you haven't.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Anything else on launch? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean we'll do a deeper. I'm sure you'll really get into the marketing of it and stuff probably next week, I would guess.
Yeah, maybe next week we can talk about everything that I did leading up to launch, and then the week after we can do a launch reflection.
Yeah, postmortem.
Yeah.
And how you're going to sell the book over time. Because I think it can be not easy, but easy to focus a ton on launch and then, how do I sell this thing over the next 6 months?
Seriously.
As well?
Yeah. How do you keep it going? And how do you be patient as well? Because like the book we're going to talk about today, Empire of Silence, didn't really take off until you're saying book 5?
Well, I don't know what book he was on, but basically what happened is it is a very quality book. Like the prose is excellent and book 2 and 3 are even better than book 1 by, I think, a significant margin.
The Goodreads reviews really reflect that. Book 1 has a 4.0 on Goodreads,
which is
still pretty good. Goodreads is brutal, right? But then I think book 2 is like a 4.4, and book 3 is a 4.6.
I believe it.
And 4.6 is like bananas territory on Goodreads.
I just finished book 2 and I've started book 3 and I'm kind of blown away so far, like 80 pages in. And
great.
Damn, this dude can write.
Good to know. Okay.
And it's also from my perspective of, first book's coming out sometime this fall. Looking at somebody, like, all right, their first book was good. Book 2 was awesome. Book 3 is awesome. So to see the evolution from book 1 to the next, you do get better at this.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, should we just jump into our discussion then?
Sure.
For the book?
Yeah.
So the book club book was Empire of Silence. We're going to start by Christopher, is it Ruocchio?
Ruocchio.
Okay, by Christopher Ruocchio. And we're going to do more of these, so we should talk about what book we want to do next. But how did you find the book? I think it was your suggestion.
Okay, so I'll try to do no spoilers for a while. I've watched enough BookTube that I know that people start with no spoilers and then they do spoilers.
Yeah, we'll do the no spoilers and then we'll get into spoilers.
We'll try to this is our first time doing this, so we'll try to remember to tell you. So a lot of people will compare it to Dune or Name of the Wind. Like those are the ones I get all the time. First, actually, I want to give a shout out Mike's Book Reviews. Excellent booktuber, and he's the reason I found this book, and also the reason a lot of other people found this book.
Cool.
I think he was the first one to read it, review it, and then it kind of spread from there. So that was cool to see the power of a YouTube come through for a good series.
And do you go to Mike's channel when you're looking for a book to read?
Good question.
Or did you hear about the book and then check if he had talked about it, or?
I'm trying to remember exactly how it happened. I think was just watching. I've been interested in BookTube for a while, and he's one of the bigger folks on it. So I was like, what's he doing?
Cool.
So it was mainly me researching BookTube, and I found that he had liked this. So I'll try it.
Great.
And I had heard the story of how it got popular through his channel as well. So I think that led me to watching that video of his dozens, hundreds of videos that he has.
Cool.
So context, this is a sci-fi. I would consider it a little bit science fantasy, especially book 2 and book 3. But space opera, sci-fi.
Like science fantasy, space opera for sure. Definitely felt closer to Name of the Wind was a good comparison, actually. That one feels the most apt that I've heard.
The prose, I thought.
The prose, certainly. The pace. Even a lot of some of like the settings and the main beats of the story.
I agree.
There's some overlap there too. It's some comparison to Will of the Many in terms of,
How so?
Well, Will of the Many obviously came after, but I think the structure is similar. And we'll talk about this when we get into structure, but the setup of like there's sort of 3 main pieces to the book. That don't, well, they're all fairly independent. They're obviously interrelated, but it's not like a Red Rising where from the beginning it's clearly leading to this one thing, and then this one big thing happens and then quickly resolves. Like Empire of Silence, a lot of it feels like a setup for the future books. And so I'd say like you have to have the patience for that for sure. Like we're still not getting to spoilers. I definitely had a hard time getting through the first half, 2/3 of the book. It was a little bit of like, I'm not sure where this is going or what it's leading to. And I think it paid it off well at the end. But it's definitely slower. If you're looking for a Red Rising or a Leviathan Wakes style, like space opera sci-fi, it's not quite like that.
It gets compared, like suggested for people who like Red Rising a lot, and I think that's actually an extremely lazy comparison.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good comparison.
They're not similar books. They are both popular sci-fi series, and that's where the comparisons for me end.
Yeah, no, I agree, because like Red Rising does its world building in a kind of like secondary, like tacked on is the wrong word, but you kind of like discover the Red Rising world as Darrow does.
It's extremely character driven.
Very character driven, very action driven.
Yeah.
And very like dialogue driven too.
Yeah.
Whereas Empire of Silence, it's being told in the past tense from the main character 1,500 years in the future. Not a spoiler. This gets revealed in like the first chapter.
You find out he's a complete badass in the first chapter.
Yeah.
Which is good. And I think the author did this on purpose, because then you do not see the badass for a long time.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like
he's a bit of a dweeb.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the problem that I had with Name of the Wind too, where it's like, kind of just like is a loser for a lot of the book. Right. Like, and that's maybe a little unfair, but it has that slowness to it where it is helped knowing that context that, okay, he's obviously turning into somebody pretty incredible eventually. So like, how are we getting there?
Yeah.
And what's leading to it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Dune is a good comparison too, because it does require that level of, I think, patience, in that there is a lot of world building and exposition that does not feel necessary for what's going on, like action wise or problem wise at the time. And so, but a lot of people also really like that.
Yeah.
Right. So if you like these big, rich worlds, it definitely delivers on that. I mean, he invented what, like 3 languages at least in the first book?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they're constructed languages or whatever the term is, but still, that's really impressive. And he clearly has a pretty flushed out view of the world from the very start. So I don't think he was discovering it as he was writing.
No, I don't think
He
so.
must have had a pretty detailed map of what he was building towards.
And one thing that I loved was the prose itself. I think now a lot of people, probably myself included, write too fast. And to your point, like you could argue this is on the too slow side, but I thought that was different. And I very rarely see books that are too slow now.
Yeah.
Like I almost feel like the books are too fast. So I enjoyed the slowness of it, but I think I might be weird in that way.
There's different tastes.
Yeah.
I mean, so I didn't like the slowness, and I was trying to articulate why. I was thinking about it, because it's not that I don't like slow books, because like East of Eden is slow, but it feels different. And I think that what happens a lot in Empire of Silence, especially in the beginning, I'd say like the first 50 to 70% of it, is the movement gets too interrupted by interiority.
There's a lot of interiority.
It's just you're in his head so much that you can lose track of what's going on outside of his head, even in a conversation, right? And so we're thinking about like braiding, right? The like action, dialogue, description, interiority. It felt like it would start to get into something interesting, and then there would be like a 2-paragraph reflection on what was going on in the middle of the interesting thing. And so I found myself skipping tiny bits of that, because I was sort of at some point, eventually I was like, okay, one, I'm not convinced that what you're telling me right now is important for reasons we're going to get into when we get to the spoiler section. And then 2, I just felt like I was getting unmoored occasionally.
Yeah.
But then he gets into the more pivotal scenes, and the pace kind of like locks in.
Yeah.
I think really effectively.
Yeah.
And I agree that the writing is really, really good. And it's flowery without being purple. Like I read another book recently that was very descriptive, but it really felt like the author was trying to prove how smart they were and like how well they could write, over describing random things.
Yeah.
And you don't get that sense with Empire of Silence.
Yeah, I agree.
You more get the sense that he's just very excited about the world and wants to talk about it a lot, which is definitely a better way, I think, to err on the overwriting side.
For sure.
Yeah.
I saw something recently on Substack. It was making an argument for the best writing is when the author is not trying to sound smart. I think that's very applicable to essays, but definitely in this case too.
Yeah.
So one thing, and we kind of talked about it with the setup is, this character, however many years in the future, talking about destroying a sun and killing billions of people. And I for me, what this does is it makes like a lot of stories are about where you're going, the destination, and you're going to judge a lot of it on whether that payoff is successful or not, like whether the author can pull that off. This makes it much more about the journey to the destination, and it opens up so many questions. You're like, okay, we have this character who clearly at this point is not capable of doing what he ended up doing. How does he get there?
Yeah.
You have, okay, he doesn't seem like the worst guy ever, so we assume there's some moral justification for doing this thing. What is that moral justification? I don't know. It opens up so many questions that if it was just present tense or regular third person past tense, that you couldn't ask that early.
Yeah, it does the prologue setup in a more personal way.
Yeah.
Which I like. It's cool. Okay, so before we get into more spoilery discussions, I think it's actually, I would almost more recommend it to a big fantasy reader than a big sci-fi reader. Because when I think sci-fi, I think more like, Michael Crichton, Blake Crouch, William Gibson, Neil Stephenson, where it's a more constrained world and a lot faster paced. And it has like a scientific element. And there's not really a scientific element here or a technology element.
No, it's much more Dune space opera than that style of sci-fi that you're talking about.
Yeah, so I definitely say if you like the huge fantasy-esque worlds where it just so happens that the magic is somewhat technologically justified, then it's a really good read for you. And if you're willing to, and if you're a active enough or fast enough reader to commit to a 7-book, 600 pages per book series, because that's a big commitment too.
Oh, for sure. And I think one of the big differences here is near future versus far future sci-fi.
Yeah.
A lot of what you're mentioning is near future sci-fi, and they're taking looks on robotics and AI and things like this. And the far future sci-fi is much more fantasy-esque in the sense of author can kind of just make up stuff.
Whatever you want. Yeah.
And nobody, we're not going to be around in 2,500 years, so who knows?
Yeah, yeah. But I've been hearing this term more, which I like, speculative fiction.
Yeah.
Just to like capture both sci-fi and fantasy, because there isn't always a hard distinction sometimes. And so, yeah, definitely, I think really strong for that crowd. Is there another big fantasy series you would compare it to that's of that scope? I haven't read Name of the Wind.
Yeah, I mean,
I've read Name of the Wind. I haven't read Stormlight.
Stormlight frustrates me because I didn't love book 5.
Oh, okay.
Book 1, 2, and 3 are some of the best books I've ever read.
Okay.
They're very different though, because they're not first person point of view. They're third person point of view from a ton of different characters' perspectives. So you see a much larger slice of the world each book, where in this we only have Hadrian's perspective. So we see the 2 planets that Hadrian spends time on.
Right.
Whereas Stormlight, you see pretty much everything.
Everything. Yeah. That's a big distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Should we dive into
more
spoilery discussions?
Yeah.
All right. So
that was kind of difficult to do, not spoilers.
I know. Yeah.
I struggled a little bit.
I kept getting tempted. All right. So the line has been drawn. We'll put a timestamp.
Yeah.
So if you don't want anything spoiled, you should bookmark this and come back to it when you finish the book to get the rest of our takes.
My sister does this weird thing where she reads the last couple chapters of a book before she reads it. So sometimes I'll actually listen to spoiler talks for a book that I haven't read just to see, does this sound interesting?
I debated doing that for this book when I was a third or a half of the way through, and was kind of like, this doesn't feel like it's going anywhere.
Yeah.
What is the point of all this? That's definitely my biggest gripe is that, and I'll make the comparison to Will of the Many, where Will of the Many starts, and it's very obvious that I can never remember Viz. Yeah, I can never remember his name. I guess he has 2 names. That's part of the problem.
I can never remember the second name.
Yeah. It's very obvious that he hates the structure of society.
Yep.
He has sort of in the first chapter, he wants to undo the structure of society because of something that happened in his past. And, he's sort of in hiding right now, but wants to do something about it. And then, he meets his mentor, he gets introduced to the labyrinth.
Yeah.
And then the whole book, there's something really significant about this labyrinth.
Yep.
But he's going to have to confront it eventually.
Yep.
And eventually he does. And it leads to, like the main events, resolution, sort of like everything in the book.
And Will the Mini has the dark academia trope. And I think from a story perspective, it is easier to make a book feel like it is moving somewhere meaningful when, okay, this school year can only last so long. There's going to be an end thing where everybody does this labyrinth.
Totally. And the thing that I kept coming back to in Empire of Silence was it just felt like Hadrian was reacting, right? Like responding to what was going on in the environment.
Yep.
Would set goals that would get thwarted relatively quickly, usually within a couple chapters, and then would be like cast off in some other direction that like made sense in the context, but wasn't like set up per se. And then would sort of like maybe have to find a new goal, but there wasn't like a clear overarching thing he really wanted.
Yeah.
Like there was in the beginning with like, I want to be a scholiast, right? And then there was kind of the like being in the gutter for a couple of years.
Yeah, literally years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you actually gave me a good, because you finished it before I did, but the thing you said about like when he introduces characters, he tells you whether they're important or not.
Yeah.
It's like very helpful because there are a lot of characters who get introduced to just get kind of like tossed away a couple chapters later. And like, like when Kat, the first girlfriend gets introduced, I was like, oh, okay. And I have a love interest in another character. And then she just dies 2 chapters later.
From the plague.
Yeah, from the plague. And I was like, oh, I like kind of liked her,
Yeah. That was interesting too, because very rarely in a book do you see somebody die from either old age or sickness.
Oh, that's an
fantasy
interesting point.
Sci-fi.
Yeah.
It's almost always getting shot.
Yeah, there has to be like more
head
of a
cut off.
Yeah. And sort of like even up to the end, right? So, he links up with the doctor, and then they're going and investigating the tombs, and then for some reason he's kind of a chosen one.
Yeah.
That like
he is, but he isn't.
Yeah. Like for some reason he can talk to the ruins, but other people can't. But like the first people I didn't think was like a motivation for him in the beginning. It was something he was remotely interested in. He's mostly interested in it because he wants to be with the woman.
Yeah, the doctor.
Yeah. And then aliens show up.
Yeah.
The Celix? Or
Cielsins, I believe.
Cielsins. We should have written all this down before we started. I feel like, okay, note for next, like write down all the
the pronunciations.
The pronunciations and the characters and everything. And then he now he actually has something he's doing.
Yeah.
Right. He's like, okay.
Once the Cielsins arrived, I thought the book took a level up.
Yes.
Yeah.
It got significantly better. Yeah. Because I think a big part of it is that's when he actually has a goal.
And had to make decisions.
Yes. And a clear antagonist, or like a clear conflict that wasn't just like, oh, boohoo, I don't have power.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, so I felt the same way. It was like once they showed up, he was clearly doing something, driving towards something. And then, it tied back to him getting a ship at the end. But like that part of the book I thought was just so much better and different than the first 2/3. And so I did find myself wondering if like the first 2/3 could have been cut by like 50%.
By a lot.
It probably could have.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious.
Well, it does raise, the parts with his family, those are questions that are still very much unanswered. And you kind of know at some point the dad and Crispin are going to be antagonists.
Doesn't he say he never saw Crispin again though?
I don't remember that. He might. It might just have slipped my mind.
I know he never saw his would-be wife again.
Yeah.
He says that. I thought he said something about not seeing Crispin again. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I would need to go back and look. But because that was sort of like the recurring frustration was that these characters got introduced and built up and then kind of like tossed aside with the narrator saying that, oh, this person isn't important, or like they don't come back in the story or whatever. And I'm like, why did we spend 50 pages developing them then?
Yeah.
Like if it, that would make sense if it told us something about Hadrian, but Hadrian doesn't really change as a character for the first half of the book, I'd say.
He like internally does, his external circumstances change a lot.
Those change a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like his internal, it's how he thinks and acts and stuff doesn't change a ton.
Yeah. I guess the main change is the, but even that's not like a huge change. I was going to say him becoming ingratiated with the other Myrmidons.
Yeah.
And becoming sort of like one of the people, or like those people. That's a change, but it also feels like he's on that track from the beginning and how he wants to reject. Although, okay, this is another thing I was kind of confused on. I want to get your perspective. He seemed like he hated his father.
Yep.
And he hated the like world that he was born into.
Agree.
And was against it. But then he was also really upset when he lost, like when Crispin was chosen as the heir instead of him. Did that make sense to you?
I think he felt repulsed by the world, but in such a way that it was more he wanted to do things his way. He thought he could do better. And he thought as the eldest son, he would get that opportunity just by being the eldest son.
Yeah.
Was my take. And the father saw what you saw and was like, why would I make this dude my heir?
Yeah. Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Like he was very aloof at the beginning.
Yes.
He was like, I'm better than all of you.
Right.
Not just the plebeians, but also my brother and my father. Like
father,
I'm better than all of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that was my, like, I think, hang up, constructive criticism going through the book, was just that sense of like, I'm not sure where all these threads are going and if there's going to be a payoff. And I did really like how it ended. I think it ended with an interesting conclusion. But even the pirate planet, like, I want to say vosotros, but that's a Spanish word.
It is a Spanish word. It means you all.
Yeah, yeah. But but it's not. Oh God, we should have written the names down. But yeah, there
are a lot of names in this book.
There are a lot of, oh my God, there's so many names. The like mythological planet where the aliens and humans supposedly had like met before.
Yep.
I don't think that was mentioned earlier, was it?
No, I don't.
I think that was a new introduction. So if I'm thinking about it from a like editing lens, some earlier fascination,
foreshadowing
of like the mythology.
Yeah. I thought to your point, I thought he did a good job of foreshadowing the language stuff.
Yes, the language stuff was really good. It reminded me of Arrival in that sense.
I haven't read that.
The movie Arrival, where it's like, it's an alien invasion movie, but the core challenge, conflict, plot driver is linguistic based. It's like these aliens are here, but they're not violent. And so the core struggle of the movie is a linguist trying to figure out their language.
Yeah.
And then once she unlocks their language, their arrival like makes sense. And like the story ties together. Actually, you just got to watch the movie. It's fantastic. But I kind of liked that as a twist where it's like his value ends up not being his status or wealth or strength or any of these things. It's that he can like speak this foreign language.
And that set up, I thought, the best conflict in the book was him having to be the translator while the other humans were torturing the Cielson.
Yeah.
And he was trying to be kind of nice to the Cielson. It seemed like he had this weird fascination, like he wanted to be nice to them. And I thought that was the best conflict in the entire book. Was that he's the translator. He has to ask these questions. The Cielson's being tortured at the same time. And he's having basically a secret conversation with this alien in their language.
Yeah. And that was a good tie-in from the beginning
Mm-hmm.
because there was the whole, like the 12 ways to rule. And
Yeah.
the most base was rule by punishment.
Yeah.
And he's pushing back against his father because he doesn't believe that rule by punishment is like the right way to rule. And that's what the Chantry is doing to the alien at the end.
Yep.
And he has found a way to subvert it
Yep.
by being the only one who speaks the alien's language.
So this brings up a question for me. I'm curious because I think a lot of books dance around the idea of religion.
Mm.
And this book was pretty heavy on like the Chantry is very influential.
Yeah.
And they're religious figureheads, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
How did you think that was handled?
I thought it made more sense to me that the largest power or one of the largest powers would be a religion.
Mm-hmm.
Because like to me, the things that would successfully span planets would be religions and businesses.
I like that. Yeah.
I don't think a government organization could,
Mm-hmm.
because it would just be much easier for that to break down than something embedded in like religious faith or money, right?
Something that can really spread by
Yeah,
itself.
yeah. And the mythology around like humans being the primary species of the universe,
Mm-hmm.
and us being kind of like the exalted ones, so to speak, which seems to
Yeah.
be part of the like underlying philosophy of the
Yeah.
Chantry, that like Earth
Yeah.
and like quote unquote Mother Earth was a godlike figure, and we had like lost Earth, and we were kind of like waiting for Earth, like our homeland, everything to return to us, right? Like that was a cool, I thought, religion, and it made sense to develop as a religion in a universe where we have found aliens.
Mm-hmm. It reminded me a lot of the idea of manifest destiny.
Yeah.
Of-
Like this universe was made for us.
yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it explained why there was this avoidance of like the prime people or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and the ruins and the kind of like mistreatment
Yeah.
of aliens.
And it was implied that the Chantry had basically nuked a lot of ancient sites
Yeah.
that would point to us not being the lead species, if you will.
Yeah,
I thought that was interesting.
totally. Because that makes sense too. It's like we've seen that throughout history, right?
Yeah.
It's like all of the Roman desecration of like sites in Egypt,
Yeah.
right? It's like this is a recurring
Yeah.
theme. We try to destroy the history from before our religion or our people, whatever they are.
Mm-hmm.
There was one thing in there that I don't know if you caught this, but obviously the like kind of big plot hole, I think, was that Hadrian was the only one who could talk to the alien.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you've got shields and starships, and
And well, you don't have a translator.
you don't have a translator.
Oh.
And at one like you you can genetically engineer people to resist solar radiation, but you can't like put in an AirPod to speak another language that has clearly been documented,
Yeah.
right? Because because he obviously learned it.
That's a good point. It seems like an important one that
And the
might be on
doctor,
Doodle Translate.
she asks him, Varka, she asks him like, aren't they using an autotrans? And he says, they can't. And then there's just no other explanation. And I was like, okay, is there some deeper lore here that you have figured out, you being the author, that you are withholding from us? Or is this like somebody pointed out this plot hole in the penultimate draft and just like stitched in a solution?
Yeah,
I'm really curious what the answer is.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, this would require me to change a lot. It'll be fine.
Yeah, and I mean, like everybody does that, right?
Yeah.
With editing, it's
Yeah.
So I thought that was the one funny thing, because I am curious, right? Like, how does Hadrian know the language? He has to have learned it from his Scholiast tutor.
Yeah.
And
What was that guy's name? He was Gibson.
Gibson. Yeah.
Gibson.
Yeah.
Brought him up all the time.
And so if Gibson knows it, then he has to have learned it from somewhere else.
Yeah.
when this was the other odd thing, right, is that Hadrian seems so shocked that the alien has interacted with other humans.
Mm-hmm.
He says, like, you humans are all the same. And then the alien doesn't say that he interacted with it. He said his people did before he was born. And so they were interacting with the extrasolarians, the far-flung humans. But then how did that language, and like this is a huge surprise to Hadrian, right? It's like, holy shit, like other humans have interacted with you guys. But then how else could they have learned the language? I guess they could have from prisoners, right? Like
that would like war prisoners.
War prisoners, who they tortured and then like made teach them the language. Like that'd be one thing I'd be curious to hear. Because also if Gibson spoke the language and the other Scolia spoke the language, I guess unless the Chantry were so religious that they saw learning the language as like heresy.
And they kind of did.
Believe that.
They
kind of did.
They kind of did.
Because they called it demon tongue or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
That is one of the first things that made them look at Hadrian like, we don't really like you.
Yeah, yeah. But I also feel like in my head, the Vatican would know more about any heretical ideas to Christianity than any like anti-Christian group in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Because it seems to me like the religious people who are trying to protect their religion would want to know the like quote unquote enemies better than anyone else so that they can push back against their authority.
Yeah, I agree.
And so even if it was considered heresy to speak it, it does seem to me like a well-educated Chantry would know how to speak the language. But sort of like, I feel like I'm nitpicking now, but
no, it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it.
I did really like the Chantry as a antagonist though. And that was something that also recurred very well because they're the antagonist in the beginning because he's going to be sent to them.
Yep. And he doesn't want that.
He doesn't want that. He's really, really against it because he sees them, and like from the get-go, they're set up as the bad guys. Like the priest in his home is an antagonist. I don't remember the character's name.
I don't either.
And then he doesn't want to go to the Chantry. And then in the Colosseum, he runs into Gilliam for the first time. And like he's an antagonist there. And then all the other Chantry are also antagonists later. And so that flowed through, I think, really well. And to your point, it does provide scope for them because they're the only recurring entity from the first world and the second world.
True.
That provide like some degree of antagonism. And so I think that, I think it feels like we can safely predict that they're going to be antagonists for the rest of the series.
Sort of.
Right? I guess I don't know. You've read more than I, but like they have to recur in some format.
Yes.
There's no way they go away at the
They're
end
very
of book one.
recurring.
Yeah. I think that was set up very well.
One thing that I think he's done, and I won't spoil anything about book 2, done way better between book 1 and book 2 is the characters fall less into specific archetypes. Whereas I thought this one, it was pretty archetypical. The brother's a bit of a meathead. The dad is this superpower man who is high expectations, mean to his sons. I thought the mom was one of the better characters.
Yeah, the mom was a good character.
Some of the friends in the Myrmidons, who I thought were good characters, but they were very archetypical.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Wise and old guy.
Yeah.
New young
There's
guy.
nothing. Like, it works. There's a reason archetypes are archetypes, and it's often because they work. Same for tropes. Like, it's a trope because it works. Like, if it's done well, it's gonna. Yeah. I think in book 2 he takes some more risks with the characters, and they don't exactly fit into these archetypes, and I think he pulls it off. I think it's really well done.
Cool.
So that's one of the big ways I thought he improved book 1 to 2. But back to book 1.
The last thing I'll say on that is it was a relief to me at the end of book 1 where they're all getting on the ship together. It's like the Myrmidons he was close with, the doctor. It's like, okay, cool. We have a squad.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
love a good squad.
I like the Myrmidons that came as well.
Came with. Yeah. So that I feel like also set up book 2 really well, where it was a bit of like, okay, cool. I know which characters I can actually care about.
And they're on a specific mission.
And a much more confined space. You
True.
know, like being on a ship. Obviously, they're going to go to planets and all of that, but I think that's part of what works for Leviathan Wakes, is that so much of the story takes place on the Rocinante. I need to learn how to pronounce that word too.
That is the problem with reading books, and then you start to talk about them. You're like,
I don't know what this word is.
Whenever I saw that word, I just glazed over it,
Yeah.
and now I gotta say it.
Well, I feel like I should extra know how to pronounce that one because it's wow, I'm really embarrassing myself now. It's the old Spanish book about the crazy guy on the horse.
Don Quixote?
Yeah, it's the name of his horse. Anyway, but yeah, when you have a crazy galaxy spanning story, I feel like it's easy to get lost in. I mean, hell, I'm getting lost in Texas with Husk.
Yeah.
So
Good point, actually.
yeah, confine the story a little bit
Mm-hmm.
does, I think, help. So it's nice they're going to be on a ship, have like at least a home to return to. Dungeon Crawler Carl did a good job of that too, where like each book takes place in a completely new setting in a completely new world, and so you lose a lot of your context, but they have a safe room they can always go back to like regroup and restock and like
That's
meet their
cool.
guide and stuff. And so you have this little home that comes with you between books that I think helps like re-ground you in some familiarity. I've never thought about that before this conversation, but it's kind of a good technique.
There's
between
something
books.
to
There's something.
familiarity.
Yeah. And like the maybe like Hogwarts, right? Hogwarts in general is safe, but also the like common rooms and things like it's kind of, somebody should write an article about that. Somebody with a blog about storytelling. You were about to say something else though before I interrupted you.
Mainly that I just thought the book really took off when the Cielsons got involved, and I thought that for me it's actually a tricky thing what he did there, because it's easy for the villain to just be off screen the whole time and be this big bad person off in the distance, and to actually get them on the page a lot in the last third of the book. I thought it spoke to just the power of putting your protagonist and your antagonist just in the same scene and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
And it would have been real easy for that not to happen in this book.
Totally.
And the antagonist just to be the church the whole time, and it's, whatever. And I think that made the book a ton better because he put them in the same scene.
That's definitely I should have said this before we got into spoiler territory, but I feel like that's in terms of recommending the book, is like the payoff does make it worth it. I think and I can see, I'm not surprised that it took a while for this series to take off.
Agreed.
Because if you hadn't read it first and told me it was really good and then followed up with like book 2 is even better, I would have picked this book up from Book Talk or whatever and gotten 20% in and just never finished it.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have known that the payoff was coming. And so I have to assume the payoff gets better and better and better and better as the books go on. And so then you have this like cascading effect where the people who found it early kept going, kept recommending it to their friends.
Yeah.
And like I had this experience with Red Rising too, where I think I picked it up when book 3 came out and started mentioning it to people. But it took a lot of people had to hear about it for a while before they actually go back. And I feel like it didn't really hit more mainstream until the last couple of years.
Yeah, which is interesting because I don't think he even planned to write this second part of the series.
I think the fans talked him into it.
Yeah.
Or the publisher.
Somebody talked to him into
it. Yeah.
Smart.
He says it in the acknowledgments for book 4.
What does he say?
He says like, I had never planned to continue after the first 3 books, but he says something like your enthusiasm or your demands made it like too hard for me to ignore the opportunity to explore what might happen with Darrow in the future.
I'd say it's paid off.
Yeah, seriously. It's a good thing he did. So all that to say, yeah, I'm not shocked that it took a little bit because I think you needed that strength of endorsement from subsequent books to get people to go back and read the first one. Which I guess is not uncommon for a series.
No.
You definitely hear that with other series too. People said that about Sarah J. Maas's.
Throne of Glass.
Yeah, that series I know.
And Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yeah.
Because the first one was just Beauty and the Beast. I would argue.
Somebody reused a plot line.
Yeah.
What else should we say?
Who would you recommend it for, and who would you not?
I mean, I think I'd recommend it to my friends who like fantasy books and people who read a lot of books.
Yeah.
Like my sister would definitely, I think, rather enjoy it. Or I have another friend who I feel like reads a book every 2 days or something. Like the people who read a lot and who like fantasy, definitely recommend it to them. But my sci-fi friends who read 5 to 10 books a year, if that, and really like Project Hail Mary and Dark Matter and those kinds of books, I think no way.
Yeah.
Because getting through all 7 would take 2 or 3 years, right? And
they need to read Husk instead.
Exactly. They got to read Husk instead. Yeah. The opportunity cost I feel like would be too high. Yeah. And it there is this like hard sci-fi, soft sci-fi distinction where, it's like Jurassic Park is a thriller with a genetic engineering backdrop. There's nothing like fantastical or like there's no huge world building.
Yep.
And it's a pretty small cast of characters. It basically all happens on this one island. It happens over 3 days. It's a very constrained story. Yep. And this is the polar opposite of that. And so that's where I feel like the sci-fi distinction is not helpful for parts of the genre, right?
I agree.
In the sense of like, this is just so different from that. That's not bad. It's just like those two, I think, are very different audiences.
Yeah, if you're trying to get into fiction, I would not recommend Empire of Silence.
Yeah.
To your point, if you're reading fiction a lot, especially fantasy, or like if you
Big
really
worlds.
enjoyed Dune.
Yeah. Early Game of Thrones.
Thrones.
Yeah.
Then this is probably a great book for you.
I think you'd eat it up. Because even like comparing it to other space operas, like Leviathan Wakes, Leviathan Wakes is really light.
Yeah.
Very light. Like you don't need to remember tons of characters' names. Each book is pretty constrained to like one clear problem that is stated in the beginning and then flows through to the end with relatively minimal interruptions. And it is a big world that is growing, but it's almost more like almost more like a TV series where there's like the underlying plot that is carrying over from books 1 through 7 or 1 through 8, but isn't like being heavily developed. It's being very lightly developed. Yep. And each book can almost be read on its own. So the pacing is very different, I think, from that. And this may just be like a writing style thing too, where it, to some extent, the more dialogue and movement there is, the easier a book is to read, I think. And the more it pulls you through, and the more description and interiority there are, the more it slows you down.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Some things are fast and some things are slow.
Yeah. I've actually had that thought a lot rereading Birth of Paradise, the novella.
Yeah.
Because there are some sections where the dialogue goes too fast. And now I'm like, okay, how do I this is like my constant problem. Is just, okay, how do I slow this dialogue down a little bit? Because, I mean, I think this is just a common writing problem. It takes a long time to write something, but you can read it way faster than you can. So in your head, this is like, oh, this is a 20-minute scene, and it's really a 3-minute scene.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I might pick up book 2.
Nice.
I feel like I should give book 2 a shot. And if I like it a lot more, then I might continue on.
That's fair.
Yeah. But there's so many books to read.
There's a lot of options.
A lot of good options out there. What should we do for the next book?
I don't know. We could do books. We could do our favorite series that we've read. We could do. There's a lot of options.
I'm thinking the next book club book. Book. I have one idea.
Yeah. What is it?
Recursion.
Blake
Crouch. Yeah. Have you read it?
Nope.
I haven't read it.
I've only read Dark Matter.
Same. Yeah. But I've heard Recursion is excellent. if not as good, maybe better than Dark Matter. And I love like time looping stories. And I know it has some of that element in it. And I think that would be fun. And it would be like completely different.
Yeah.
From this.
I'm down.
I feel like it's also, if we're thinking like YouTube algorithm, it's like popular, but it's not something like everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
So that would be my one idea, but we can noodle on it a little bit too.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I like it. Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So we'll do Recursion by Blake Crouch next. And we're at time. Beautiful. Any other last things before we go? Order Husk on Amazon.
Yeah.
Should be out today. Thing. Yeah, go get Husk.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about what went up to launch next week and then post-launch the week after, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we didn't do your book updates.
Waiting for the editor.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can talk more about those next week. Yeah. Cool. Like and subscribe. Share this show with friends. And we'll be back next week.
Sweet.